one.
It's a very good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you are watching this or listening to this podcast. Thank you very much for choosing to download it, to watch it. Today I'm honored to have an honorable member of radio, my honorable member of the media, my friend, my colleague, my former colleague, my brother, Dumela Tlhabut.
Keida, Bosman.
Keida. Yo, I'm so honored to have you, brother.
I'm honored to be sitting here with you. I'm honored to be more Mr. President as well.
Yeah. Mr. President.
The honorable one.
you've been seeing him on social media.
Yeah, and quite interesting that I actually come to sit here after Jessica Mbange, Don Dada.
Yeah.
Some of the well-known people, so yeah. But I'm looking forward to it.
Mr.
Baby Powder.
Mr. Baby Powder. No, thank you very much for coming, my brother.
Thank you so much for inviting me, my brother.
Let's introduce you to everyone. Kalibito Mosimaneotsile James Seattle.
Yes, sir. Ke salwetse ko plekeng go ba ke Manchester. So Taung ke like a municipality and area. Where we have different villages.
Okay.
Go Taung. Over 23 villages actually. It's falling under Taung.
23.
Over like the small because now they are continuously growing. You get more and more.
Yeah.
So like it's more area in Obarike Manchester, not far from the actual town near Taung.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so I was born there. And
small village.
It is not quite small in a way compared to other villages. Yeah. So like there are other smaller villages around Taung or around Manchester itself.
Yeah.
But the number is one thing. I will actually say Kohabonema lady because she's also from Taung.
Yeah.
So it is quite smaller compared to Manchester. Yeah, so I was born in Manchester. Thomas Gerago Manchester up until grade 5, and then I can move to grade 6. Yeah, straight down. That's when I moved now to Kudiklo.
Yeah.
There was a grade 6 go my mother's side of the family. So I actually ended up attending the primary school at age 2. I started off at Manchester, Moshasho Primary School, and then I when I moved now, to grade 6, that's when I moved to Kudiklo, one of the villages also Gutaung. And I did my grade 6 primary school in Bahamaidi Primary School, Kudiklo. Yeah.
And what was it like, going from one primary to another, making new friends, new environment, no traveler, or were you staying in that new village?
I actually stayed there. It was quite interesting because I used to go to village here more late, school holidays.
Yeah.
Now and then. And then obviously, when I was still small, a little and diploma thing, but not for long. Yeah. And so it was quite interesting. And so it wasn't so difficult per se.
And then right?
Yeah, it's an right. So it wasn't so difficult because I actually knew some of the people before I moved anything to go and attend school there.
Yeah.
Quite interesting because I ended up actually staying with my full-time with my grandmother. My maternal grandmother.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting. I won't actually complain about my schooling years.
Yeah.
And
And then grandmother, was she strict or was she like nice? Because what grandmother, they can be like that.
You know how grandmothers are. So yeah, So yeah. So my grandmother was actually she was quite cool. She was quite nice. But the fortunate part, Guyon, is that she actually taught me a lot because here's the thing. She was wheelchair bound by the time I moved to start my grade 6 year. She was wheelchair bound, so obviously even before she was wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
So when I moved there to stay with her full time now, I knew how to do things on my own, like many things on my own. I wasn't dependent on anyone per se. Because I moved there with my older sister, but then later on I ended up actually staying alone. So it was really buyer, like obviously making sure that cleaner, and then also school uniforms are also ready on time. Was class, and also you get to iron your clothes. It was something that you had to do on your own.
Yeah.
So I will say in a way it taught me a lot of responsibility. to be independent.
At a very young age.
At a very young age, yeah, because my old lady later man nebale mo Joburg wa itse mo sebagolo ba sbana mo Joburg.
Yeah.
They only come maybe once a month or maybe twice a month if ba khona. But most of the time nebale mo Joburg, yeah. Ba sbana.
Okay, so now what made you like, when did the dream of coming to Joburg to come and stay near your parents come?
Yeah, it was not a dream per se.
Yeah.
Because when I was at school, then like it's something it is a given. How at school you need to move. Was a good village. You are looking forward to the day how move out to Luena and actually go and stay with your parents, or I suppose to go and study further. So I moved here 2007, the very same year I first matric. So if it's so cool, and then that very same year I first so cool. November, then I said no, get Joburg, and that's when I moved to Joburg. Then obviously the following year, that's when I started now my journey now. I was study, which was actually quite interesting because you need to study for something it will easy for you to become employable.
Yes.
And then I was radio, but no, radio, you telling them about journalism, but no, what is that?
Yeah.
So it was quite interesting, but I'm actually grateful for Ban Sapotile with the letter that they were getting. Bang Alawilo to follow with the dream that was radio, because I always wanted to do this. I remember actually back in 2007, metric year. So then we had to go to Taung, the town itself, really apply the ID. Because obviously metric year you need to have your ID. So it was around the month of June, the month of July, and it was actually the very first time Kibwana Motualumu studio hosting a radio show in studio, and that was in 2007, my metric year. But I always loved radio because I suppose there was no any other way. We had to love radio.
Because there was not TV necessarily.
TV in a little good next door. So no sonso patale. Like
5 rand that's good watch.
No, 5 rand was actually too much. Like back in the days, only 50 cents it was actually too much or a lot for you to be able to pay.
But no go window and just look over or no
No, fortunately but then because back then it was only later on that black and white. And TV molo, you paid obviously your 50 cents. And then a few minutes, so your favorite movie, Bob TV or whichever channel. Unfortunately, battery fell. But so and as I'm telling you, like radio, I refund, yeah. So we had to love radio. We'll actually listen to radio before Yaskela, but also coming back from school, you'll be looking forward to that radio show in the afternoon. And also, before you go to sleep at night, you'll be looking forward to that radio show. So radio has always been a way of life for Rona, because there was no any other way of entertainment besides radio.
But now, who were you listening to at the time?
I grew up listening to Mosimaneotsile FM, and also our community radio station, Kutaung Valta FM, which actually happens to be the first radio station Kibona a radio presenter to Retsumu studio. So they allowed us to go in there, but obviously you had to sit on the other side. And it was actually the guy by the name of Umpimeses Tlapelo, may his soul rest in peace. And funny enough, like later on, he was the very same guy who allowed me to step into the studio for the very first time ever.
What?
Hanseke study, so I obviously studied and then I had to do my practicals. When I went to back to the radio station, Valta FM, he was the guy when the programs manager. And he allowed me into the studio. And I mean, each and every time when I think about my radio journey, I reflect on how I actually got to meet this guy. And then get to sit across him more facing, rediscuss or how am I going to be obviously allowed into the studio to learn from other presenters. And so I grew up listening to Mosimaneotsile FM, Valta FM, also a community radio station. But there was also another radio station, OEFM, which was strictly Afrikaans, one will say.
Okay.
I grew up listening to that radio station. Northwest, yeah. So I think it's area at Lexdorp. I grew up listening to that radio station, and I'm telling you, like, for the music, but also for the conversations, and we just loved it. And we just loved listening to those radio stations, Valta FM, Mosimaneotsile FM, and then obviously OEFM, as I mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who exactly inspired you go radio? Like any of the presenters?
Yeah. So growing up, obviously listening to the likes of Bo Douglas Mosadi, Bo Benny Motaung, and many others. Mosimaneotsile FM. You know, how already Mosimaneotsile FM. You'll obviously have the voices of Cebo Manyapelo, the late Cebo Manyapelo, and many others. So I won't say one in particular for Mosimaneotsile FM, but I will say many of them Mosimaneotsile FM. Listening to different programs. With the late Mondiko Mutubi and many others, Mosimaneotsile FM. Just listening to radio, Bomukubi Monebati, who's still on radio, even now, Mosimaneotsile FM. Just listening to them, listening to their style of presenting, and you actually, it was quite cool just listening to what they had to offer there, and you just loved it, yeah.
All right, we've got a guy joining us on the outside over there. He's over there. He's just here to say hello. And
he's just enjoying Mr. President.
He's admiring the car. So no. All right, so now we're going to take a quick break in the next 5 to 10 minutes so that Rilo told us something else.
Absolutely.
So what did you decide to study? So where did you go and study?
Yeah. So I decided to study journalism. In journalism, I've always been fascinated by the journalists telling stories here. So I decided to study journalism and media studies via Valtech. And that is what I studied back then. But just recently, also my radio production, the National Electronic Media Institute of South Africa, that is NEMISA. So that's what I studied. And but obviously, I'm looking forward to studying more. I'm looking forward to just adding more to what I already know, radio, because you can never say you know more.
Yeah. No, for sure, definitely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you say, since you're a radio personality, would you say podcast and radio are the left shoe and the right shoe?
No, I will definitely say I will not compare them to the left and the right shoe. I will compare them to, it is one and the same thing. Like back in the days, we never imagined doing radio the way we are doing radio now.
Yeah.
So radio has evolved over the years. Back in the days, right, you know, radio just PM9 battery. Also, radio in your car maybe, but then later on things changed. Yes,
medium wave.
Absolutely. So things have changed. And when it comes to podcast take a radio, just that we are doing it differently. So we are doing it in a more modern way. And there's always been a debate here, no, podcast is going to replace radio. There's no way, because according to me at least, it is one and the same thing. So it's just that it has evolved to from what it used to be to what it is now today.
Absolutely. No, definitely. And then, okay, let's start your journey le Kofifi FM.
Yeah.
And then you're also assisting another radio station in Northwest.
Yeah.
How did your journey go, Kofifi FM? How did you end up more? Hella, we're in the middle of Westbury now.
Yes.
Back in the day, you could never chill in Westbury like this.
Yeah.
Especially with a car like this, they could have taken it from us, but here we are.
In the middle of Westbury.
In the middle of Westbury. How did you end up more Westbury?
So how did I end up here? My lady Letema, they started working go Baleko Hamburg, and then they moved to this side. And my mother used to work for actually this family down in Claremont, which is not far from here. So they stayed in Westbury. And obviously when I moved to Johannesburg after my matric year, the only place I can move Mohona was obviously to come and stay with my parents. And that's how I actually got to know Westbury. How I got to know about Kofifi FM, remember I had already studied 2008, but getting into radio was quite something difficult. We know almost only the gatekeepers, the doorkeepers more especially at the community radio level. So how I got to know about Kofifi FM, I was actually working for another company, really busy more community. This is how I got to be introduced to the Westbury community itself. Within the communities, replace the old bulbs, what the bonazelle is the silver, and replacing them with the energy saving bulbs.
Or the street lights?
No. Actually, modern gloom.
Oh, okay.
So already replace the energy saving bulbs. So I will go into this flat for the very first time ever. And then also having been told Westbury is a very dangerous place.
This was like a gang.
I'm telling you, yeah. And I remember I was not used to the area per se as well. And having to go into these places, I'm actually representing this company, Ispanale Eskom, We are here to replace your energy-saving bulbs. And so it was something difficult, something different. But funny enough, I got into these homes and then I got a warmest welcome actually from the community member.
Oh, wow.
They will invite me to have a cup of tea with them.
What?
And then, where are you from? I'm from Taung. And I actually met a guy in Plela. No, I'm actually also from an area not far from Taung. And how I got to change my surname and actually be classified as colored was because of the apartheid era. And I needed to, with my family, I needed to also obviously to make sure that I'm welcoming to these communities and also get to be hired easier. So if I classified as colored, it was more better compared to being classified as a black person. And so they welcomed me into their homes, Bamfadi Day, and then I'll have breakfast.
Wow.
And later on, a few weeks down the line, I was actually promoted in that particular Spanish.
Yeah.
And then I got to be a supervisor more so. So I got used to these communities, Nuclear, Bosmont, and other areas by working for that company. That was before working for Kofifi FM. And then how I got to know about Kofifi FM, I was working for another center in Westbury, based at the Family Worship Center, as a social media trainer there. And I saw in a
Westbury Community Center.
So
before it changed.
Before I moved to the Westbury Youth Center, I was working for another one known as Arlabs down in Westbury, Leone Barike. It is part of the Family Worship Center. It is a church, but within the church, there's an organization there, Barike Arlabs. So they are also training, similar to the Westbury Youth Center. They are also training young people, or at least back then they were training young people, life skills and stuff, including also social media. So I was working for them, and I got to see this local newspaper article. There's a radio station that is going to open up. That was in 2011 now. By 2012, this radio station is going to open up. What? This is something I've always wanted to do. Yeah. And so I obviously approached them. First of all, address, this is where you find them. Go Westbury Secondary School. I went there, obviously, a couple of times. So I wasn't welcomed. I wasn't actually accepted immediately. But no, you can join us. No, we haven't started yet, but come and check us after 2 weeks. I will come after 2 weeks to come check on them.
Yeah.
And so that is basically how my journey began. And then later when I started now volunteering with station, and that was in 2012. They opened up their doors, or officially went on air in 2012.
They were at the hospital?
At Coronation Hospital, yes.
Oh, yes, okay.
So that's when I joined them as a volunteer. But I wasn't on air per se. I was working as, not different from what I was doing before when I was working for that company, going from door to door. So I started working for the station now as a volunteer, as a reporter. So I will literally go out into the communities, gather stories. This other tape recorder, an old one. So I will go out there, get a record about you, and that is how you and I actually got to.
I remember that tape of yours.
Yes, yeah. That one is for kids, yeah. So that's how I actually got to be introduced to the world of radio.
Yeah.
As a professional, obviously, because I knew radio back then. The practicals in the Northwest Province. But working on Kofifi FM, that's how I started, 2012, and then it moved to the stage whereby I ended up now moving into becoming an actual co-host when I was working with you on the talk show.
Yeah, I remember the daily wrap-up.
Yes.
And we had all sorts of different guests.
I'm telling you, something that one was actually not maybe expecting to see anytime soon, because growing up in the Northwest, and then 1 minute you have now Nomvula Mokonyane, the premier, then coming to Westbury, and I'm still fresh in the industry. The premier is coming to Westbury, and you need to interview her. So where do I begin? Because I don't even have experience as a journalist. Never mind you, I haven't actually done interviews of that caliber. So I had to go out there, interview at the premiere. So that happens to be actually one of the biggest interviews when I started at a community radio level, or when I started on Kofifi FM, and then later on obviously I got to alongside you interview the likes of Mosimaneotsile and a couple of others. So it was actually a start of good things, because later on it was easier for me to just approach minister, to approach the premier, the MEC, and say, okay, can now Mosimaneotsile say from Kofifi FM, and obviously planning to have an interview with them.
Sure, my man, your journey has been absolutely amazing. And what do you think are the struggles that you went through ka radio?
Yeah, the struggles more radio, and I will actually think Kibuya for a couple of, if not many, if not all of them actually, by the whole community radio sector. It has always been that the lack of resources and having to go out and get stories and be criticized at that. Remember, harana the resource, and you need to be out there. How the community radio, you must report on our issues. The resource. So as I mentioned, I used to work before Kinalukului. I used to work to these different areas. So we are Kofifi FM. Yes, we are based in Westbury, but we are broadcasting for the area di Sonalebo Ranfontein, the area di Sonalebo Soweto. So when people listen to Kofifi FM out in Rivali, they want to hear their stories. So how do you get there? So it has always been that. Something that is still there, by the way, in other community radio stations. And I'm still experiencing that also, the lack of resources, but also, just people criticizing and not knowing that Wanamo community radio sector, we are actually volunteers. And I will say that if you work for a community radio station for life, then you are a volunteer for life. We are not different from any other community activist. We just happen to be behind the microphone. We just happen to have a voice. But I'm not different from someone who is a community activist. To some community to make sure that young people are actually move away from the substance abuse. So we are also not different. It's just that the only issue, the only privilege and alone get the microphone because we are able to reach more people, and that is something that we should never actually take for granted. Because they want this platform, they need this platform. But as we can actually get into radio.
Absolutely, and I think I like what you're saying, Jorge. You're a community activist or berekelang an NGO.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you are servicing the community by your field share information.
Yes.
And make sure that people are informed, educated, and they are kept abreast of the issues that are happening in their communities.
Yeah.
Why is funding so difficult for community media? Because you've got an airwave, you've got a frequency, you've got a listenership base, you've got an area base that you cover. But then how is it possible that community radio stations struggle to raise new?
Something, it is a struggle, I'm telling you. And why is it difficult? I think we also need to change how we run these community radio stations. If we want to make money, we need to change the manner in which we run them. If we want people to come and invest, people to come and advertise on the radio station, we need to change the manner in which we run radio stations, community radio stations. There's so many community radio stations in South Africa, but how many of them have unfortunately had to shut down their doors because they were not run properly?
And
because people in the Bali greedy, they forgot along the way. We actually started this as community activists. We started this because we wanted to be the voice for the community. I mean, if Kofifi was not here, how many ministers, premiers will actually come to Westbury? But we actually gave this community a voice. And I believe other community radio stations are doing the same. They give those communities a voice to say, no, this is what is happening here, Minister. Then it will be easier for Minister Fiki Lembalulo to come down here and see how people struggle with transport. It will be easier for Minister Becky to come down here and see how people struggle with gangsterism and substance abuse in the community. But so we give people a voice, but we need to change the manner in which we run these organizations in order for them to start making money. Otherwise, we'll be here for years and we'll still be talking about the issue of lack of funding or no funding at all years from now, because who wants to put money where they don't actually see value?
And so the issue is management and management. No, good leaders, management, but also us as community members, we need to be appreciative. And business people, we need to be appreciative of this community or this media sector, so community radio sector, because we don't mind paying radio station number 1
that happens to be a commercial radio station, and radio station number 2 that happens to be a public broadcaster. But can I problem to pay a community radio station, because after all, you're a community radio station, so why should I pay you? And then you forget in this community radio station, many others with this radio station to make sure that lights are actually kept on, places are clean, and stuff like that. So I want to say business people, they need to think about that, change their mentality towards community radio stations. Politicians must also change their mentality, because unfortunately, most of them when it leads up to the elections. And then after the elections, we actually just become a memory for born, until once again we get to the next elections, that no, there's actually a community radio station, because they cannot actually deny the fact that we are closer to the people, we are closer to these communities. So yeah, not only must actually our leaders change, I'm talking about leadership in the community radio sector, but also we need to also change our attitude towards community radio, because we need money to run community radio.
You know, there's a community radio station called Hot 91.9.
Yes, yeah.
Now, Hot 91, they took over a radio license of the old Horizon Stereo.
Yes, yes.
And they commercialized a community radio station into a commercial community radio station. Yeah. Now they started getting people like Jeremy Mansfield, the old Fiverr Farm Boys, the old 94.7, Sasha Martiningo, and there's a couple of them. And now it's a commercial radio station. So they compete with the likes of 947, 702, SAFM in terms of revenue.
Yes.
And I remember meeting and chatting to those guys. And you're quite right. The issue is management.
Yeah.
Your station manager has to have a vision. Your program management needs to have a vision. Everybody must be accountable. Everybody must be able to deliver on their work, so that the station buy machinery that actually works.
Absolutely,
and it's able to generate revenue. And then they started getting your local dealerships, your local doctor, your local farmers, so you know, within an area of coverage. So, and I always wondered, community radio stations, especially the black run radio stations, how is it that they are not able to attract sponsorship? But I think, as you say, key issue management.
Yeah, and we are obviously a community radio station is not from the onset. We are not in the business of making money. That is not what we are there for. But obviously, without money, how are we then going to be able to do what we are supposed to do? To go out and make sure that the communities are well informed, they are well represented. By representation, I mean having to go out there, honestly, the state of the city address, the state of the province address. We need to be to be out there,
and you must be branded. And
we need to be. Yeah,
it's all those little things that make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So beside management, as I mentioned earlier on, yes, management must be on point, but also to those who listen to to this community radio stations, let us not only wait for the annual general meeting and come and complain, right? Because then you are not really encouraging, but they have always been there volunteering with the community radio station and say, because it is okay for you to criticize, but I always say that criticize me in a way that you are going to help me grow. But to sky criticize and also forget the good that these community radio stations are actually doing in the community. So maybe you had to take away that community radio station today, then what? What is going to happen to the very same community? So yeah, beside management, to let us appreciate what we have, because in other communities, radio stations they were there before. Unfortunately, so as thing, and people are suffering a lot compared to when those community radio stations were existing.
And I think what I love about community radio, it's the fact that there's so many young people who have been developed through community radio. They've made their ways to all other commercial, regional, and so on radio stations. Yeah. My guy, let's take a break. I think I've had a great conversation with you as part one. Ari Lobatla Kota or like some chip roll. I don't know. I feel like something greasy today.
Sure.
Something mafuranya, chipsy, Russian special or something. And then we'll come back. And I think on our next talk, let's explore further the issue. Politics. You've reported a lot on politics.
I have.
Let's talk about Joburg politics, your experience, Yadi Politiki tsa Joburg in the next segment. So thank you very much for watching this part 1. We're going to take a break. Thank you so much for listening, for watching. Please download. Please make sure that you subscribe to this channel, Free Ride Podcast. We are moving. We're going to bring you all these great people to come and share knowledge. Lilo na iso. All about Fueto.
Itera.
Do it.